a headline's not like plastic surgery, which is taking something ugly and trying to make it pretty. It's just making it stand out.
My writing journey started where most journeys begin. Disappointment, frustration, confusion, struggle, failure, and repeat. Derek Hughes also spent many painful months in this cycle. Derek struggled to get readers, he constantly felt not good enough and nearly gave up. Maybe you are stuck right now too. If you are, I want you to know there is hope at the end of the tunnel. Your first step is to look at your headlines thoroughly. Within a microsecond, potential readers scan your headline and decide intuitively whether they will click or scroll right past it. If you develop super strong headline writing skills, you can join the top 5% of writers who get seen and read. Derek transformed his writing. He gained more than 5,000 followers on Medium and went from $0 to $800 a month. How? Learn more in our interview with Derek. Derek, I'd love for our audience to get to know you a bit better. Can you share who you are?
Yeah, so I have a normal full-time job and a normal life, and probably about 12, 15 months ago, I was feeling a bit bored, had a bit of headspace, so I just decided to start writing a little bit and sending stuff to friends. And then I heard of this thing called Medium, and the rumor was you go on Medium, there's loads of people there keen to read your stuff, so you just go right there and you get loads of readers. And so about a year ago, I started on Medium, and I just started writing regularly on there. And although in my first month, I think I wrote 7 articles and I got 6 readers in total. So that was less than 1 per article. So I started to realize it was a bit harder than everybody said. And then I just kind of kept at it, kept experimenting and learning. And then probably about 6 months ago, I had about 500 followers, but then things just clicked. And over, the last 6 months probably went to about 5,000 followers on Medium and make $600, $700, $800 a month on that. So quite excited about what's happening there. And that means that some of my headlines have worked and they've earned quite a lot of money. To be honest, I don't feel like an expert because some of my headlines still don't work. It's quite an art, isn't it? Even if you kind of understand the basics and know what to do, it doesn't always work. But I learned a few things along the way, and so start to kind of help others really with their headlines, because a lot of people struggle with it. A lot of people struggle to get readers, and it's nothing worse than spending like hours creating that perfect thing and then you send it out and nobody reads it. It's quite disheartening and discouraging as a writer, really.
People might think he's all in, but this is not your full-time job. Let's dive into whether writing is your main gig or not.
Yes, at the moment I work for a church in Manchester, so I help with their social media. I do some of their community leadership stuff, help with some of the things we're doing in community to help disadvantaged people. And kind of community work, that's what I've done for the last few years.
What are the biggest mistakes new writers make? Because Medium as a platform is a different animal.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite embarrassing if you go back to like your earlier writing and you see what you did, etc. But like when you start out, particularly if your understanding of writing comes from school or college or university, and you realize online it's quite a kind of different game. And I think there was a lot of mistakes with my headlines in the early days, and there was a lot of mistakes with I think the biggest mistake I made was assuming that readers care, and that when you're like writing and you've written something and you think it's quite good or it's interesting or it's got value, it's kind of understanding actually readers don't care. They're quite impatient and they've got a lot of things they could do with their time, and at any moment they're thinking I might go and do something else. And so it's learning all those kind of, tricks not the right word, but those ways of serving the reader and writing for them rather than yourself. And particularly when you're a new writer, you're consumed with yourself and your anxiety and your insecurity, your sense of imposture, and is this good enough? And perfection. You have all those things, but they just get in the way because it's not about you. It's about like where your reader's coming from, what are they thinking about, what would help them. And just getting to know your readers and trying to understand what would work for them. And that's probably the biggest shift I needed to make in my early days, and then trying to work out what that looks like and how you actually serve your readers and what it is they're really looking for. So, for example, I think one of the big things is about not writing about a topic, but writing about a pain point. So I've got somebody I'm coaching at the moment, and they sent me their article to look at this week, and it's about health and alternative medicine and traditional medicine. And he just describes a lot of stuff. And you get to the end of it, and it's just like, well, so what? You've just said a lot of stuff. And it needs to have an angle. It needs to have a purpose. There needs to be a reason for somebody to read. Readers are not just thinking, I'm looking for a generic, very descriptive piece of writing. We're all quite selfish, aren't we? And it needs to add something to my knowledge, or add something to what I'm doing, or solve a problem, or reveal something. So yeah, it's trying to get into your heads of your readers. And I mean, that gets easier the longer you're on. If you're quite new to writing, or writing on a particular platform, you don't know readers, you don't know what they want. But if you just start doing it and you listen to comments and you see what people read, what they don't, you can start to kind of fill in some of the blanks about what people are kind of looking for. So that's probably like that's a bit of a big picture thing. But I think that mindset shift was really important for me.
I always say write 100 stories, or even better, write 365 days in a row and watch it change your life. Consistency is key. How have you found it to be a game changer?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is you only learn what readers want by writing a lot. Just increasing your volume, or just thinking, I'm going to write regularly for a long time till and through that you kind of learn to understand what people want and what's kind of in it for them. I think consistency is one of the fundamentals. It doesn't solve everything, you don't just consistently write the same rubbish, but you kind of consistently write in order to learn, in order to get good. And there is no silver bullet, is there? There's not just like a secret hack or trick. It's like over a long time. So I think at the start, you got to think. So I did this actually when I started on Medium. I was like, I'm going to write for a year and then I'm going to see what happens, and I didn't try. And that otherwise I would have probably stopped after about 2 months. But I said, I'm going to write for a year and just see what happens. And from that, you kind of learn a few things along the way, but only after writing kind of lots and listening to lots of conversations and comments. So I think finding a way to be consistent is like a foundation really to all the other stuff that you need to kind of learn and pick up.
Hey, it's Christina. Do you feel disappointed, frustrated, confused? Do you struggle or feel like a failure? Then my online writing school is for you. The online writing school is included in my paid subscription on Substack. So if you become a paid subscriber, then you can join also my video tutorials and my community of like-minded people, and we'll find an A to your Q's. Crafting headlines is an art. Confused readers won't click a headline and read a story. I know about your movie trailer idea. Can you break down what makes a headline truly irresistible, drawing readers in without being clickbait?
So I've made both of these mistakes, and I think that learning how they go together, this idea of clarity and this idea of curiosity, you need both. And I think early in the days, I'd leaned into one rather than the other. And I think the kind of movie trailer idea captures it perfectly, because the aim of the movie trailer is to get you think, I want to watch that film. The aim of your headline is to get somebody think, I want to read that article, I want to click on it. And they do it really cleverly with movies, because what they do is they make it really clear what the movie's about, what the key issues are, what sort of genre. I mean, you can watch 30 seconds of a movie trailer and you think, I want to watch that, because it's for you, it's your sort of thing. Or within 30 seconds, you're like, actually, this is not for me. And kind of what the issues are, what the genre, the stars, etc. So you have that clarity of what it's about. And that's what a headline needs to do. It needs to make the reader really clear, who's this for? What's the problem? What's been offered? What's the problem? They need to be really clear in that. But you need to have that curiosity. So the thing that you're not clear about is what the solution is. So in a movie, they never tell you what the ending is in the trailer, because then you wouldn't watch it. So if you write in your headline, eating vegetables will stop you getting cancer, then it's like, well, why would I read the article? Because I already know what the solution was. If the movie says John Clooney gets the girl at the end and the baddie dies, and you hear that, then you don't watch the movie. So I think it's clarity is on the problem and what you're going to address and who it's for, but the curiosity gap is what the solution is. And so you need to kind of get them both. And I see a lot of writers either being really clear without curiosity because they leave the answer, or what they do is they get hold of the curiosity thing and they kind of write some vague headline that actually doesn't give the answer, but doesn't tell you who it is or what it is. And I think that if a reader's confused, they won't click. If they've got to work hard, for a headline, someone's scanning through, aren't there, and they're seeing lots and lots. And if they've got to work hard to think, what's this about? Is it for me? then you've lost them. So I think that learning to combine those two have been really clear, but also curiosity. That's what will get people, the right people, to click on it, because that's really what being clear does. It gets the right reader to click on it, because you're not just looking for any reader, you're looking for the readers who you can help, who you can serve. If the wrong reader clicks, then they'll just click off because they'll realize it's not for them. And on some platforms, you'd get penalized for that. You know, the algorithm think, well, people don't think this is any good because they're clicking off. So it's, clarity helps you get the right reader to click, who you can serve, and so who you can help.
Clickbait is a big no-no on Medium. Readers are fed up with clickbait titles, so Medium wants to protect them. It doesn't distribute clickbaity titles because they trick you. Can you share your take on what constitutes clickbait and how to avoid it while still piquing interest?
Yeah, I mean, this is the hot topic, isn't it, in writing circles at the moment, as people are just fed up with clickbait, and they're fed up with being clicked. And so it's the hot topic, and particularly platforms like Medium want to protect their readers from that sort of stuff. And I mean, there's a couple of kind of angles for this. I mean, the first thing is clickbait tricks you because it gets you to click, but it doesn't deliver on the promise. Yeah. So anything where you think, actually, does your article or reading really deliver on the claims of the title? And if it doesn't, then a reader feels tricked. You lose credibility. They're not going to look at your other stuff. They probably won't read this. And you might have got a quick click, but you would kind of ruin your reputation. So anything that's like too sensationalist, you can earn 10 million with this one trick in 3 weeks and stuff like that. So that's like a definite thing where factually you can think, actually, can the article deliver this? That the advice or the lesson you're offering, does it deliver it? That if you can't, that makes it clickbait. But I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and there's something also about how it feels. So like I've been thinking about like some shops you go into and you get the customer service person come up to you and say, can I help you? And sometimes, so we bought sofas not long ago, and it was a horrendous experience in the UK. If you go around a sofa shop, they want to help you, but it just feels like this sleazy salesperson who's on commission, who wants to force you into something. So when it feels like you're not there for the reader, but you're trying to trick them into coming onto your page, but that's more felt, and that can be about just the vibe and the culture of the platform and the reader. And I think that's a bit kind of nuanced a little bit. But anything that is too sensationalist will, because we resist being tricked, don't we? If we feel like we're being manipulated into something, and we kind of turn off it. So I think, can you really deliver on your promise? I think you need to make promises in a headline. That's the easiest way to get clicks. But can you really deliver on it?
You've mentioned that your headline techniques can propel Medium writers to the top 5%. Can you unpack that for us? How can writers leverage your strategies to stand out?
Yeah, sometimes I'll quote like being the top 5% writers, get ahead of other 93%. So that'd be like a Medium thing of people who earn more than $100, to just make it specific in a sense. I think in terms of how to be successful as a writer, whether it's a blog or Medium or whatever, it's understanding that there's like 3 ingredients almost. The way I see it is like there's 3 tests. So there's not a silver bullet, but there's 3 tests that you need to pass to kind of grow and be successful on Medium. And the first one is people need to see your writing. So it needs to get kind of in front of them. So Medium, that's using publications. It might be SEO or sharing social media. So people need to actually see it. In order to, as your first step. The second thing they need to do, they actually see it, but they actually click on it. And so you need to get the kind of clicks and views. And then the third thing that needs to happen is once they've clicked on it, they've got to read it and follow it through. And if you're kind of struggling as a writer, it's kind of looking at those 3 tests and thinking, is it getting in front of people? Are people click on it? Once they're clicking, are they reading on it? And almost seeing where your weakness is, or trying to improve in all 3 areas. And if you gradually, there's no overnight success, isn't it? But if you constantly write consistently and improve, more people seeing it, more people clicking it, more people reading it, learning tips for each of those 3 stages, then gradually the wheel just increases and you get momentum, and gradually you will see growth from that. There's no claims that headline solves it all, you know what I mean? But it is a key part of it because it's the second of those 3 that people are seeing, but are they the right people clicking on it? I mean, we could dive into detail of any of those because there's loads of strategies on all 3. But I think understanding where you're weakest and where you need to improve, and understanding what gets you in front of people, what gets people to click, and then what gets people to kind of keep reading. Those three things are probably the essential, just to keep doing those, keep improving, and add a consistency to it is what will see you eventually hit traction and hit growth.
And you are very specific. You invented the 4Ps approach to headline writing. I know the 4Ps from Marketing Mix. Can you share how you developed this method and what elements you believe are essential in a headline?
I think that I invented it. Like when you read stuff and you're picking up ideas from everywhere, aren't you? And in the beginning, that doesn't matter because it's all to help you. But when you start passing it on to other people, got to be careful. You think, actually, no, that's from Eve Arnold, or actually that's Nicholas Cole's thing, etc. But I think that the 4Ps came from me. Yeah, I think that. I mean, people have talked about similar ideas, but when I started to think about what goes in the headline, what are the 4 building blocks that you need to put in your headline? The 4Ps are in your headline is the first one is the problem. So what problem does the reader have that you're going to address? The second is the person. So who is this for? And sometimes if you can name that in the headline is good. Sometimes being more specific about who it is can be a good idea. So you name the problem, you name the person. The product is essentially the type of article that you've got, So sometimes that's tips, sometimes it's a life lesson, sometimes it's a system, it's a blueprint. Sometimes that word will appear in the headline, but they should get a sense of what sort of thing you're offering. And then the last one is the promise. If I take your product, your 5 tips, and I put them into practice, actually, what is it going to deliver me? What is it going to offer me a promise? One of the easiest ways of upgrading your headlines is putting more of those P's explicitly in your title. That means you've got to need, there's a kind of craft to that because you don't want like a paragraph as your title. It's got to be tight and concise. But certainly if you think about that, I think that's how you write an article. So if you get to your headline and you don't know the promise or you don't know the product and you've written your article, then actually it's not a headline problem. It's an article problem. And sometimes people struggle with a headline because they've not been clear on their article. And so a headline's not like plastic surgery, which is taking something ugly and trying to make it pretty. It's just making stand out what's already there. So you should already have the 4Ps. It's just helpful to clarify in your head and then you work out how to say it in your headline. You don't have to put them all 4 explicitly in a headline. Sometimes it's pretty obvious who it's for, or it's obvious what the problem is when you name the solution. But I think it's an easy way. It's a way it helps you write better and it helps you know what you're trying to convey in your headline, rather than just thinking, I need a clever phrase or I need a clever hack. Actually, you're just helping people understand those 4 things. So yes, I think that's just how I've created headlines. It's how I've thought about headlines. And when I was thinking about helping others with it, when I realized other people were struggling with headlines, I think that's how it just kind of, I was just writing it out one day, I think, and then I just noticed they starting with the same letter. And I was like, actually, this is an easy way for me to remember. I like things simple, Christina.
Could you make it more tangible for us, Derek? Can you share some recent headline examples that have really hit the mark?
Yeah, so in the course, I take all the articles that have been more than $50 on Medium. So that's what that is the kind of best performers in a sense. So let me give me like a really simple one, which was how to gain 500 newsletter subscribers in 3 months. So that was one that did half decent for me on Medium. And who is it for? It's for how to gain your first 500 subscribers. So it's for new people. What's the problem? Well, the problem is you don't have any subscribers. What's the promise? That you're going to get 500. And in that one, the product is quite weak because all it is how to. It's not 5 tips or 5 things or whatever. But the reason that that's not clickbait is because that's what I done. I got 500 newsletter subscribers in 3 months. And so I just tell people how I did it, so that's how that avoids being clickbait for me, really. If it said how to get 5 million in 1 week and I hadn't done any of that myself, then you're in clickbait territory. But that doesn't have anything fancy. There's no jazzy words or anything like that. It's just very clear, very simple. If you want to get new subscribers, then you would go for that. A slightly different one I just wrote on Medium this week, and I might need to look at, see if I've got it here to get the exact words. Where is it? How I broke the league magnet rules, in brackets, grew my email list by 237%. So the problem is people who want to have a league magnet, but it's not doing very well. It's not growing their thing, the promise. So I say how I grew by 237%. So the implication is you can grow by that, but I don't make the promise that you will do that because I can't guarantee that. And the product is a personal story, how I broke the rules. So it's a personal story. So it's not a how-to, which is just a generic thing. It's how I did it. And I guess the interesting thing about that one, which is how I broke the league magnet rules, is understanding the vibe and the culture. So people are fed up with articles about league magnets. All right, it's everywhere. So if I just said how to create a league magnet that got 270%, people wouldn't be that interested in it because it's just 10 a penny, etc. But it was how I broke the league magnet rules. So it's like it implies that I did something different. And so that's where you kind of create the curiosity. And I did do something different. It's not kind of clickbait, but I think it's understanding your culture and vibe and like what's going on. And if everyone's fed up with league magnet, you can't just repeat what everyone's doing. You need to kind of say something slightly different. And so that's where understanding your kind of readers come in, as it were, stronger, as it were.
I hear people say, so you write about writing. That's easy. It's not, but that's another story. Could you share some other topics with us?
How I stopped eating sugar. 3 quick tips for those with a sweet tooth. And so you think, actually, what's the product? It's 3 tips. What's the problem? Someone can't stop eating sugar. Who's the person? It's obviously people who eat sweet things and they're kind of struggling with it. And so you can just, use it in all, here's another one. These 3 ideas will stop you eating junk. So sometimes you don't have to name who it is in the headline if it's like really obvious, as it were, and you don't always have to. So in that one, to stop eating junk, you don't have to make the promise about you lose weight or you're healthy or you live longer. If the promise is so strong that people know it already, then actually you can just deal with the problem and how you might address that. What about this one? Become an engaging presenter. So we're naming the person an engaging presenter. Become an engaging presenter with Barack Obama's 5 story tactics. So it's like, what's the product we're offering? Actually, we are leveraging someone else. We're using their story tactics, and it's for people who want to present, and the promise is you'll be an engaging presenter. We don't mention the promise there, the problem, because by saying engaging presenter, we actually think the problem's obvious, as it were. So you don't always have to ram everything in. What about this? So let's just go for a completely different topic. The 3 biggest mistakes people make on a first date. So that one, you've not made any promise. Yeah, you've not promised that you'll meet the love of your life, etc. We're just hitting to the problem. So sometimes if the problem's really strong, it can carry it on its own. So you think, actually, if someone's going on the first date, we're terrified of mistakes we're going to make. And so actually that is so strong. If you just tell me the 3 biggest mistakes, that's almost enough. And it's not clickbaity if they're real mistakes and you'll say something about it. But I think having the 4 Ps in your head, it helps you understand if something needs anything adding. So the 3 biggest mistakes people make on a first date, quite short. And you think, actually, do you need to add in a promise to that? And you look at it and think, actually, no, it's strong enough on its own. But if the problem was a bit more lukewarm than that, and then you might add something in brackets because you think, actually, I need to make that. The one that we miss off the most usually out of those is the person and naming the person. But sometimes a clever way just to make it stronger is to name the person and be more specific about it. So I wrote an article, and one of my best performers was, so I'll go back to writing for a minute because that was the subject I write about. But the headline was New Writers Can Make Money, 5 Ideas That Are Working For Me. And by saying not just writers, but new writers, you kind of target into being more specific. So sometimes not just saying this is for health professionals or this is for writers or creators. If you say it's for new ones, or someone like Eve Arnold does a lot about aiming at people who are working a 9 to 5, and she'll include that a lot because she's just targeting and being more specific. So if you're writing on health or helping people with relationships, like that one about the 3 biggest mistakes on your first date, it wasn't just 3 biggest mistakes on a date, it was being more specific. So sometimes just naming the audience and then just trying to be slightly more specific in it can just, be more clear, and I think make it more curiosity inducing, because it makes people think, actually, this is for me. So not just for writers, it's for new writers, or it's for people who are running for the first time or something like that. So you can take any of the 4 Ps and just try and up the ante on one of them just to make it slightly stronger. And it stops your headlines getting boring, because sometimes you can focus on the person, other times you can think, right, I'm going to ramp up the promise, or I'm going to be more specific on the product. And you can kind of keep shifting those, and it keeps your writing interesting, or your titles, or whatever it might be, because you're looking at it from a different angle. So yeah, I find it really helpful, universal. I go back to it all the time, even now.
Oh, I like that. It's universal and works for every age group. First date in kindergarten, high school, 30-something, 40s, midlife, 90s. And then you can experiment with different people. Then there is the rule of 10. It's intriguing. It reminds me of Inc. magazine and BuzzFeed, where headline writers are supposed to write down 30 headlines and pick the best. I also heard of a similar concept by Tim Denning or Eve Arnold. Is the rule of 10 a Derek thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the people like Eve Arnold and Nicholas Cole probably talk about a similar idea. And so, yeah, I'm not sure if this is original with me, but it comes from the photography story. James Clear talks about this professor who has this class of students, and he divides them into two, and he wants them to take photographs. And to one class, he says to them, I want you to take the best photograph you can today. All right, just want one, and it's got to be the best that you can. And to the other group, he says, I want you to take 1,000 photographs. That's your aim at the end of the day. And so they go off and do. And if you think about the one who's got the job of creating the perfect photograph, actually, all they do is procrastinate all the time. Because they're kind of thinking, is it this? Is it that? What is a perfect photograph? Does it need to be this? And they spend all the day overthinking it, which stops them getting anything done. You're creating 1,000, it doesn't matter. All you have to do is create 1,000. So you create 1,000. And at the end of the day, he compares the best from the group without 1,000 with the ones that were aiming the best. And the ones with 1,000, their best photograph is better than the one with one. And that feeds into a psychology. And so really, this is where the rule of 10 comes, which is you're not trying to write the perfect headline. You just need to write 10 at least before. And you make it a rule to say, I can't publish a headline unless I've written 10 first. And what that does is loads of things. It stops you overthinking, because you're not trying to create a perfect headline. You just need to create 10. It stops you. I mean, I fall into this trap all the time. I'll create my first headline and I'll think that's quite good. And then I'll be stuck on it. And you can fall in the trap of using the first thing that you've got. And the other thing, it just gives you a process. How do I create a headline? I create 10, and then I would say create 10, and then you pick your best and just publish that. And it stops you overthinking about, is this perfect or not? Because all I need to do is follow my process. Yeah, I think that just kind of helps. You don't need to just create a perfect headline. You just need a process to follow, because typically people do the headline after they've written, they're exhausted, they've got no creative energy left, and it's just sad to publish a headline that isn't quite good enough, and it just wastes your writing. And so sometimes we just need practical how-tos. It's fine having the curiosity and being clear, but you just need to know exactly what you do. And so, yeah, I'd say just write 10. And if I'm honest, I don't always do it, because actually you just try and shortcut it. But every time you do, you just produce something that's not quite as good, and you feel less confident in it. So, yeah, I think just create 10. And you don't have to create 10 in a row. Sometimes, I recommend, do at least 7, and then try and get some input. Look at a template, look at your swipe file that just triggers your curiosity to kind of help you get past 10. I think that conquers kind of procrastination, overthinking, and all that sort of stuff. Just have a rule, just have a way of doing stuff. And you just go into autopilot, write them all down, have a look, pick your best one. Yeah, it's interesting how your best one is often your 8th or your 9th or your 10th. And you thought number 2 was good. Because after about 5 or 6, you run out of ways of writing, and then you start to think about it a different way, and you think, well, maybe I won't include that, and I'll add this in, and then suddenly, hey, presto, you get something a bit more unique.
Emotions are a powerful tool in writing. How do you infuse descriptive language to evoke those deep feelings and senses in your audience?
Yeah, so descriptive language is kind of really important, the science around it, actually. So like if you're writing about customer satisfaction, and so you're saying satisfy your customers, or you talk about making your customers smile. Making your customers smile is descriptive, it's sensory language, it evokes images, etc. And all the science suggests that has a massive impact on the brain. People process it quicker, it's more memorable, it's more persuasive. So I think looking at what we write and trying to make it less abstract and think, can you include a word or a phrase that evokes the senses? And where you can do that and it feels natural, the science and the evidence would suggest that like has quite a different effect on the brain, and kind of it lights it up, as it were. So yeah, so where possible, I mean, I think you don't need to overthink it too much. If you do the stuff we've talked already, you'll get ahead of most writers. But if you want that extra edge, sometimes it's worth looking at what you're saying and thinking, actually, can I change that word, and think, can people imagine what you're writing? Do you use words that evoke stuff? And so instead of growing, you talk about, I think, because I was looking at my headlines this morning, one talks about, it uses the word catapult to talk about like growth or something, and if you talk about catapult, people imagine a catapult and they imagine launching something, and it evokes something, slightly different. Or I think one of my headlines was like something like 17 eye-opening truths, an eye-opening, and even as you read that, your eyes slightly open, it evokes something rather than just interesting or insightful or something, where rather than the concept, you kind of evoke something. The funny thing is, the highest headline I had was my quickest to write, and it happened last summer, and I think I was really fed up because things go well, and I just whacked out a headline. So this doesn't follow any of my rules, so don't kind of obey this. But it was this one. I think it worked because it was sensory and it was descriptive. And the headline was this: it was "Write with style and you'll get a bucket load of attention." I mean, write with style, it doesn't follow any of the rules, but it kind of, I'm wondering whether it conveys, a sense of flourish or being cool or just something, and you'll get a bucket load of attention. It's not like you'll get loads of readers or you will, reach the top 10%. It's just a bucket load of attention, and you can imagine a bucket load of attention. Visually, you see it. And so I think that when you use metaphors or images or just one word that's descriptive rather than abstract, the science definitely says that helps the brain. And I think that is, that's like one of the advanced tips in the course. And I think that if you want to just get a bit further, that applies to writing, not just headlines, but obviously headlines are really important. So I think that could just be an extra tool that writers have. And it's so easy to do. You just look through your writing and think, right, where have I got like an abstract concept, and it kind of makes something that you could see visually. And that can like make a massive difference, and probably makes you stand out, because a lot of the abstract stuff, build an audience, or whatever it might be, everybody writes. And so you're just going to sound like everyone else. If you come up with something descriptive, book a load of attention. When was the last time that was in a headline? I've not seen it before. So that would make you stand out and make you distinct, as well as kind of tapping into all the brain science about it. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Procrastination can be a real roadblock. I know you read Ali Abdaal's new book and learned that procrastination is triggered by a lack of clarity. How do you recommend writers overcome it and gain clarity in their work?
Yeah, this is so simple. We don't believe it's true, but whenever you are not doing something, so you're not writing, or you're putting it off, or you don't get around to it, often it's because your brain doesn't know exactly what you're going to do. So the reason I give the rule of 10 for headlines is because, right, I'm going to write a headline, but what exactly are you going to do to write the headline? You need a process. And whenever you've got an exact process, so I'm going to edit my work, I'm going to edit this article. What does that look like? You shouldn't say I'm going to edit it. What you should be, I'm going through my editing checklist. You know exactly what it is you're going to do. I'm going to write an article. Well, what does that look like? If you think, actually, this is how I write an article, the first thing I do is I get my outline out. Once I've got my outline, I fill in the blanks. The next thing I do is get the introduction. I put it away for a day. I pick out my checklist. I go through that. Then I follow my headline process. Then I publish or whatever. If you've got a process, you know what you're going to do, then that cuts out a lot of the stuff. I think a lot of people, for writers, it's like, I've got a blank page, or I've got some vague thoughts and I'm going to write an article. But if you don't know exactly what that looks like, exactly what you're going to do, you're going to procrastinate. And that applies to non-writers. Well, I'm going to do a project. I'm going to manage this project. I'm going to start this project. I'm going to do some work on the project. Exactly what? I'm going to design the logo, or I'm going to, check the budget, or, when it's specific in your head, you'll do it. But often we hold back because it's just slightly fuzzy. And as soon as it's fuzzy, we just love to not do stuff, don't we? So I think that as a writer, you should have a process. You should know how you're going to write, what stage you're at. How do you get ideas? How do you do a first draft? How do you edit? How do you get headlines? You don't have to have the perfect process, just have a process, and then you can change it and evolve it, but know exactly what you're going to do. If we can do that, and you can just learn to write more and waste less time on putting it off, that's really key, really helpful, I think.
Hey, do you struggle to get readers? Do you feel not good enough? I can help you with my online writing school. With the online writing school also comes the Medium school and the Substack school. So I've got you covered. I'd love to see you inside. Just become a paid subscriber for my newsletter and get the online writing school too. See you inside. Derek, could you share your writing process with us? You work for the church in Manchester and on Medium. In addition, you have a newsletter. How do you combine Medium and your newsletter? Is repurposing a thing, and when do you sit down to write?
Yeah, so I have a full-time job, 9 till 5. I mean, sometimes it's Sundays and evenings, but yeah, I work full-time. And for me, I have to write first thing in the morning. So I'll get up, I'll maybe pray, I'll have coffee, a quiet time, and then probably after half an hour, have my shower. And then the first creative thing I need to do is to write. If for me personally, if I write later in the day, I find writing quite creative and demanding, so it needs like my best attention. So I'd always do that first thing. And I try to do 1 hour sessions. So say it'll be one session or sometimes 2 sessions, depending on what time I wake up, etc. And I will tend to have a conveyor belt of articles at different stages. So I think the thing really helped is when I divided up an article process. You have the ideas, you're writing, editing. It's got different bits of it, and I do them on different days. But it's slightly chaotic because I tend to go where the energy is. And, so sometimes I maybe be writing the first draft of something and it's really hard work and it's not really going that well. Then I will just leave it and jump into editing something else. So I'll just have a conveyor belt at different stages. And I'll just think, right, tomorrow I'm going to do the first draft on that, or I'm going to generate ideas for my kind of Evernote. And I'll just really go where the energy is. And each time, the conveyor belt of articles, they're all just moving to the edge towards publishing. And what that does for me partly is I try not to focus on the outcomes and I just focus on the inputs. I just focus on writing for an hour every day. And if I just do that every day, I'll get tons of articles written. I don't need to worry about, I need to publish this one or whatever. If I want to just do any ideas, I find that the easiest thing. If I'm a bit tired and knackered, then I just spend an hour generating that. And then I just find, that I will have this kind of conveyor belt of articles. So I aim to get probably like 15 a month on Medium is probably typically what I'm going for at the moment. And then I do ConvertKit. I do a newsletter once a week to my audience. And typically I'll take a Medium article that's performed really well. So I use Medium to test content and to test ideas. And then I'll take probably one of my best ones and shorten it slightly for my newsletter. So Medium's typically 1,000 words. Newsletter probably 650 is what I aim for. So I'll kind of trim it down for my newsletter. And then I'll also write on Twitter, X. I'm not as committed to that as I used to be. But I will just take bits of articles and just post them straight onto Twitter, long form or short. And just, that takes a couple of seconds because you just copy and paste, tweak it, make it a hook, etc. and just kind of send it out. Yeah, and then I take my Medium content, what's performed well, and I'll transform it into products or courses. That's probably where I'm going next, so some of my courses have been that, which gives me confidence because it's like this has been tested and this kind of works. And that's the good thing about Medium. It's all your content, isn't it? And you can do with it. The idea of just writing loads on Medium and you just leave it there. It's like, why are you doing that? You've got like ready-made courses you could just take and you hardly need to do anything with them. So that's kind of my, writing process. So there's lots of advice flying around, isn't it? And I think it's important to get clarity on what your strategy is and how all the bits start together. So for new writers, you're writing on a platform and someone says Substack, so you start doing that. And someone says LinkedIn, so you jump on that. And all of them can work, but it needs to have a clear strategy. So my strategy is ABC, attract attention. And I do that on Medium. That's where I get my traffic. Build relationships by pointing them to my newsletter. And then C is convert into cash, which is products and courses, and so that's my system and that's my flow, and that works for me. I think Medium for getting traffic works for me. It gets attention and people point to my newsletter, and then people on my newsletter I offer courses and stuff like that. So that's like how I build the audience, as it were. And I find from Medium you get good quality leads for your newsletter because if they sign up, it meant they've read like 1,000 words. So by then they're pretty committed, unlike maybe LinkedIn or X, where it's just, a tweet or whatever, and then they're committed, but they could easily fall off. So I find that works really well for me, but I know people building really well on Substack and other places as well. The key is do what works for you and have a clear strategy and do it for a long time. Don't just jump around because that just gets you lost, really. Yeah, so publications on Medium. And I remember when I first got in a publication, my first publication, and I thought, this is it, I'm going to go viral, do you know what I mean? And like, hardly anything happened, you know? So it's like, I would say don't publish on your own, always publish on a publication. But it's not a silver bullet, you know, and it's not a magic thing. And your publication does put you into front of a few more readers, and every reader counts, doesn't it? So, I mean, my personal approach is I've got 3 or 4 publications that will publish pretty much every time I submit. And so I just focus on them and I rotate around them one at a time. I rotate around them. And what that means is there's a drip feed of my writing coming on. There is other more specialist publications like Writing Cooperative, Better Marketing, but there's often like a delay with that and they might assess your writing, etc. And sometimes if I end up with a backlog and I get distracted by that or I'm trying to write with that, I find sometimes the gains of that is greater, is less than just me focus on writing and getting content out. And I used to, you know, the publications I used to, you know, I've done various analysts think which one is the best, and I'll be like, oh, this one went viral, it must be this one, but then I'll find another one didn't do very well, etc. So, yes, I'm in like Illumination, Synergy, I write in there, I write in New Writers Welcome sometimes, Practice in Public, I do that one, Bouncing Blogs, I do that. They're probably my staples, and then occasionally Writing Cooperative or Better Marketing. I've tried to get in there as well. But I find that does distract me a little bit, and you start to write for the publication rather than for the readers. And even if you get into the publication you want, it's only going to make a little difference. And I wonder whether it's best just focus on consistently delivering content, focus on your readers, get the publications that will publish you on a regular basis so you don't get kind of anxious or distracted. I mean, that's my personal approach. I know some people think a lot about the boost. It's a question of how much that kind of helps and whether you get distracted and you start to like try and play a system or whatever. Really just you want to get good at writing, you want to serve your readers. If you get boosted, for me, if you get boosted, that's a great addition. But to just focus on that or just focus on a certain publication and spend all month trying to write the perfect article that fulfills all their criteria and stuff, and then it might work or it might not. So yeah, so some of my writing doesn't appeal to Writing Cooperative, some of the style, you know, but then if I come up with an idea that I think they might be interested in, then I will write it and submit it. But it's not my main strategy. My main strategy is just serve my readers and try and get a regular sense of content out and go with the publications who would use that. And then occasionally with the odd article, you know, go to Better Marketing or Writing Cooperative, but they're not my meat, as it were.
Let's switch gears, Derek. What do you enjoy doing when you are not busy writing or working?
My free time, I like to go to the theatre. We have a good theatre here in Manchester. Going there tonight, actually. And I like to run, and I like reading, really. They're probably things I like to do in my spare time.
Spring is upon us. Can you feel the change in the air too?
We can smell rain. I think that's all we can smell here. I don't think spring's on the way. Although my wife's a keen gardener, so she is pointing out snowdrops and things like that in our garden, and she will tell me every day every little tiny thing that's growing. But yeah, it doesn't feel like spring yet.
Are there any writers or authors on Medium whom you admire and would love to meet in real life?
Eve Arnold. I think probably in the early days she was a big encouragement to me. And I think what I loved in her early days, she was just realistic about this is hard and you've got to write for a long time, and she didn't smooth coat it and stuff. So yeah, maybe Eve.
Looking ahead, Derek, what are your goals and aspirations for the rest of 2024?
So I mean, I tend to set input goals, you know, process around what I'm going to do rather than what I'm going to achieve, you know. So I've launched my first paid course just recently, so I think I would like to do 2 more courses by the end of the year, and just keep writing 15 times a month on Medium, keep my newsletter, if I can keep consistently writing that monthly, you know, that's growing a lot at the moment. And I think if I just do those things, then I just see what happens. You know, I foolishly set a goal of 1,000 followers on Medium by the end of last year, and I was on like 5,000. So it's just like, I just focus on inputs. This is what I'm going to do, and we'll see where it takes me, what it earns me, or who follows, or who it helps, really. So yeah, 2 more courses and just keep that kind of consistent writing, because it's not easy to keep going, is it?
I think that's a great foundation for your courses. Many like and trust you already, and that's crucial. How can our viewers reach out to you and connect with you further?
Yes, I mean, you can find me on derekhughes.biz, B-I-Z, derekhughes.biz. That's where you get my free course, Long Form Mastery. You can find me on Medium, just search my name, or on Twitter. But obviously, yeah, just this week launched a video course around headlines, because I see so many writers writing headlines that are a bit mediocre, if I can't offend anybody with that, and just not giving enough attention to it and not thinking hard enough about it. And so, yeah, I've just packed everything that I've learned, really. I mean, that's my writing style. I do stuff, I see what works, and then I just tell others about it. That's really all I've got to offer. So, yeah, I just share the headlines that have worked, why they've worked for me, my process of what I do and how I do it. And given, yeah, just, I don't know, I just think a ton of value in the course, just giving away everything that's worked for me.
Derek, it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for your time, Christina.
Wow. So this interview was mind-blowing and showed the power of headlines. If you want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to my channel, and please do me a favor, hit the like button so more people can watch my videos and find me on YouTube.